Hi everyone, today I'm teaching you how to paint 4 simple loose watercolor flowers. Stick with me guys, you can do this. So today I've got all of my paints here. This is a new set from Hippie Crafter and I've linked below their information if you wanted to check out this palette, 36 colors. They gifted this to me and it's beautiful. I really am appreciating it and loving it. I have my Academy watercolor paper. We're just gonna start making some brush strokes here. I have this dagger brush by Christy Rice, and we just want to get into that creativity. So for a peony, we're going to go a bunch of loose petals over here. This is a very loose version of what you might consider as a peony, and they have these beautiful petals that are upwards and open and billowy, but then these petals that open too far, they point downward like this and kind of forming around, on the lower end where the stem is. So we need some petals on the top as well. And then once this is dry, we're gonna add in our middle, the yellow parts and some brown parts to create that center of the flower. So you can add in some lighter versions of this pink or some darker versions as well. I'm gonna take off some of that paint right here in the middle, just so it's not so wet and allow it to dry up. This is called lifting paint, lifting color. And then adding in just some little kind of scrubby, I don't know, half circle-y shapes here on the top that looks like there's some fluffy petals, and make sure to leave some white space. So I'm mixing up my green. This is a new palette for me. There's a lot of greens on here. So I'm just trying to add in different ones to get the color that I'm wanting. So I've got some lighter grassy green, some sap green in there too. Just experimenting with this palette until I see a color I like. So I'm just putting in the stem really thin. If you can see, I do have this paper sectioned off into quadrants so that I'm trying to stick with the 1 quadrant per flower and making sure that every flower is about the same size. You can add in, you've got your leaves, you can add in some grassy bits or whatever you want, add in some splatter as well. And this is gonna have to take a little bit of time to dry before I can do the details, but we can add in a little bit of that yellow at this point. And just allow it, it's gonna spread because our flower is wet, and that's okay. Watercolor spreads, don't even like stress about it. Let's add in just a little bit of a more saturated pink color here. Wherever you feel looks good, maybe outlining some of those petals so that they kind of differentiate between each one. Little scrubby marks at the top for those fluffy petals. And that one, we'll just have to let it sit and go to the next one. So we are going to try our hand at painting some loose tulips right now. So I'm going to grab the purples on my palette. There's a couple purples on here. I feel like they're really bright and I'd like to tone them down a little bit. And I'm going to add in some pink here, maybe to make more of a pinky purple color. The other one was more on the blue side, and just trying to make something that feels a little bit more closer to nature. So you've got your brush, lots of water in your paint, and I'm just going to start painting out some tulip shapes. And if you're thinking about the idea of basic shapes, these are more of an oval with kind of a triangle at the top. As you can see, at least these, I've made them a little bit pointed. And I think we're gonna do 3. Let's do 3 tulip buds here. And remember at the beginning, I told you these are loose flowers. So we're just going to do the idea of these flowers. We're not looking for realism. If you're finding yourself stressed at all with what we're painting, remind yourself basic shapes, the idea of things, and I think it can come out a lot prettier, a lot more satisfactory when we take the pressure off ourselves and allow ourselves to paint whatever happens to be. Which leaves me now to the discussion of today. And as I'm adding in these grassy green stems for our tulips, and we're going to do some long, thin leaves, I want to encourage you guys to think about the idea of allowing yourself to create an ugly painting. Okay, what do I mean by that? I know it sounds far-fetched and weird, but I have a story to tell you. So one day I was feeling really frustrated and really upset. I'm going to add in a little more purple here to our little petals. And I wanted to create something, but I didn't want to mess up. And I thought, you know what? I'm mad. I just need to paint it out. Let's do a little bit of splatter here before we start our next bloom section. And I will pause the story for a second because we're going to grab some yellow now. We're going to make some like black-eyed Susans. And I'm going to take quickly that center part will be brown. So I'm just going to make these little half dome shapes. 2 flowers is what we'll do. And then we're going to mix up some yellow, and we're going to start painting out the long, thin shapes of the petals for these flowers. So I sat down to paint and I said, you know what? I don't want to be stressed. I just want to paint for my mental health. I'm allowing myself to create something ugly. Whatever happens, happens. And as you can see here, I mixed a couple different yellows, cadmium yellow, I believe, and also yellow ochre. And these are black-eyed Susans, and all the petals are going to be angled downwards. So we're creating these C-curve shapes that curve in towards the bottom. I'd like to think of the shape of these flowers as more like maybe a mushroom cap or even a small umbrella. So we're going to do the same thing we did with this first bloom. I'm adding a little bit orange in there. And of course, a lot of the petals are hidden behind that first bloom, and that's okay. Just curving in towards the bottom of the flower. But I sat down and I painted something that was so beautiful to me because I had let go of this idea that I needed to find perfection. When I allowed myself the permission to paint something ugly, it wasn't that I wanted to paint something ugly, but I was allowing myself to paint whatever came to mind, and I wasn't putting stipulations on myself about how I wanted it to turn out. It allowed myself to get out of my analytical brain and into my emotional brain and just go with it and kind of feel my way out. So I encourage you, if you're ever feeling stuck, one thing to do is allowing yourself to paint whatever happens, because it just helps with that letting go process. And it really is effective to give yourself a mental break. All right, so we've done our little black-eyed Susans. We're going to go ahead and let things dry a little bit more. I'm just adding a little bit darker brown here. We're going to go back to our blooms and darken up some things as they're dry. But let's work on our 4th bloom. Now, this is one of my favorite. These are my version of Snapdragons. And I just take this pink paint, really light, and lots of water in it. And I'm just adding these little blobs of paint. They get smaller as we go up to the top. Let's do a few more, some yellow ones. We're soon going to connect these with our little stems. Guys, if you're enjoying this video, please give it a like. Please follow, subscribe, and also hit that notification bell so you get notified when I have new posts and new videos. And leave me a comment below. Let me know, what is your favorite bloom so far and why? I would appreciate hearing from you. And also, have you ever experienced that block of trying to create something perfect? And does it help for you to let go when you allow yourself to paint whatever happens? All right, so as you can see, I am connecting. I'm using a dagger brush. It just has a really thin point, and I'm using that to connect all these little blooms together. So really thin stem, a little tiny stem connecting to the main stem for every bloom, and then allowing us some green marks here for leaves at the top, on the sides. And I think we should do one more set of blooms. So we'll go with this purple color. It's already made up, so it works perfectly. Just adding that into the background here and then connecting it. Now, if you wanted to connect with a thin brush, I've used a number 2 or a number 1 before. For some reason, I find the dagger to have even a better point than some of those. After time, I've noticed those other ones don't tend to keep that pointy tip that I'm looking for. You could always use a liner brush as well, which is a really long, thin tipped brush, and it's going to give you a really nice point and really thin lines for veins in your leaves and your flowers, and I absolutely love a good liner brush. All right, so now I'm adding, you could see just a little bit of that red and that orange together. What I want to do, oh, that's spreading a little bit more. That happens sometimes. It's okay because it's still a little bit wet. I am going to outline the edges of all of these petals, okay? So it might look a little weird right now, but stay with me. The idea here is that we're going to take our clean brush. We're going to make sure it's just a little bit damp, and then we're going to spread that out. And now you can see that we've defined each petal shape. You have the lighter in the middle. You've got the darker orangey-ish color on the outside. And it's just a little subtle change. If you want, you could make it more saturated and, darken it up a little bit, and then you would see it more. Adding a little more pink to this one here. I think I want to add in just a bit more as I'm talking through this. So, and this happens sometimes. You'll add in the color that you think that you want, and it tends to dissipate I think these petals need a little more definition, a little bit more pizzazz. So just blending in once again. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. And you can even put some lines in the middle of the petals, like coming out towards from the center if you wanted to. So this is your painting, gonna do what you want. I've got my brown now and I'm gonna do some lines, but I'm gonna switch my brush, I think, to the liner. And as you can see, it's a very thin brush. It's a wonderful little tool. And we're gonna take our dark brown over the top of the yellow, and we're just going to make these little thin marks. The center of the peony flower always has these little the petal parts. I always forget what exactly they're called, but that creates a little bit more realism for our flower. So with these guys here, a little bit more saturated purple to add in some petal shapes. So I just have one C curve kind of oval shape on the left and on the right, showing these two petals that are coming together in the center of our tulip. And if you want to darken up your greens, more than welcome to do that. I just wanted to add a little bit of that. You can even just do it right underneath your leaves if you want to have a shadowed side. Okay, and we already have the splatter in there, so I think this one is pretty much done. And then as I'm moving on to our lovely black-eyed Susans, which I think that's what they are, I'm not always sure. A little bit more of a darker paint just to add in a little more definition. And, by all means, allow the paint in the background, which is lighter, to shine through. It's going to give you a more fluffier looking flower. More full, all the things. I like how this guy is sort of tilted downwards. You can see a bit of the back petals behind the center. Again, darkening up your leaves. And guys, I know that you've probably heard me say this before, but I teach watercolor on Patreon. If you're having such a fun time, feel free to check me out. The link is in the description there. I have tiers as low as $2.50 a month, and I've got bonus content, extra exclusive tutorials. I have live stream access, art prints, even a mental health art workshop once a month. These are all different bonus things that are connected to different tiers. So check that out if you're interested in painting more with me. But thank you for being here. See you guys on the next video.